class. This is your professor, Dr. Brian Lippincott, and I am here to tell you a little bit about Carl Jung's theory of archetypes, and I'm going to discuss that in the sense of the proof of archetypes. And one of the main proofs of archetypal images and archetypes, the way Jung described it, is the field of ethology, which is animal studies. And the idea is that archetypes are universal forms that are in all cultures at all times. So if we look at animals like great apes or other animals, and they have certain patterns of behavior that they follow universally, then that would translate as the embedded archetypes within the collective unconscious, which all beings really have associations. So definitely all human beings, but also animals have that. Okay.
So this is where we talk about the ideas of archetypes. So archetypes are systems of readiness for action, and at the same time, images and emotions. So just that sentence, what does that mean? So I'm going to skip down a little bit, and Jung used the metaphor of the rainbow. So there's ultraviolet over here. That's the archetypes, psychological aspect. And then the same infrared, which we can't see either one of these. We really can't see instincts. We see the effects of instinct. We really can't know archetypes. All we know is archetypal images like dreams and that kind of thing. And so there's the part of life or that we see that from that, just like we know, like there's gravity, because we infer that from seeing the motion of bodies. So the idea of instincts on the one pole and archetypes on the other pole. So things that are instinctual are also archetypal. So I'm going to skip around on this hand, but you might be saying, Dr. Lippincott, what the heck are you talking about? Well, I want to give you a quick example by going to the end. Okay. This are examples of babies. And this is a joke, but I could imagine myself kicking a dog. But you would have to be really sadistic to kick a puppy or any of these. If somebody, like archetypally, somebody that abuses children is broken somewhere. Because you just look at the way these, you see evolutionary one and through our thing, that babies all have this similar appearance. And what they do is they draw caregiving out of people, like a little rabbit. No, I can't. No, I don't really want to eat a rabbit anyway. But I love dogs too. But even look at chicks versus birds. All babies have that same look. Now, if you look at it head on, guess who it looks like? It looks like Mickey Mouse, one of the most loved characters made up by Walt Disney of all time. Okay. These are inherited with the brain structure. This is a quote from Jung, by the way. Indeed, they are a psyche aspect. They represent, on the one hand, a very strong instinctive conservatism, while on the other hand, they are a means of the most effective conceivable instinctive adaptation. They are thus essentially the chthonic, the earthy portion of the psyche, that portion through which the psyche is attached to nature. Not a question of inherited ideas, but inherited possibilities of ideas. Like I remember when my first child was born, I was scared because I said, I have no idea how to take up a baby. I don't even know, what do I even think? You know, what is going on as a dad? But as soon as I saw his head pop out, I was in love. And that head, again, that head, I saw myself, I saw life, I saw the world, all in that 1 second. And all of a sudden, I knew how to be a dad. And I knew things that I did not know. I knew that were instinctive to me, that just came out. So there's a lot of this, but this is an interesting part here. This is a duck, and I think it's green. I'm colorblind. But the point is, when there's a certain time when the duck shifts to a different color. And that's an innate releasing mechanism that has to do with sexuality and having babies and that kind of thing. So in 1951, the ethologist, it should say, Nico Tinenberg, published a book, which I have no hesitation to describe in one of the most important books of the century, The Study of Instinct. It is proposed that every animal species possesses a repertoire. So an archetype is not a behavior, it's an ability to respond to a certain stimuli. The behavioral repertoire is dependent on structures evolution has built into the central nervous system of the species. Tinenberg called these structures innate releasing mechanisms, or IRM. And each innate releasing mechanism is primed to become active when an appropriate stimulus, called the sign stimulus, is encountered in the environment. So if we were all sitting around in a class and there was a child, a little 3-year-old in the class of all of us adults, we would not leave the class and just leave that child there. That child would be an innate releasing mechanism that would cause us to have caretaking, just like the green of the duck at a certain time. Or another example is the male stickleback fish. What happens when the female stickleback fish lay their eggs? Then the male stickleback fish, there's a chemical when the eggs are released that causes their whole belly to turn red. So when the male stickleback fish swim around and they see that red belly on the fish, it triggers a response, and they do this kind of dance where they swim up. I want you to see me from, my hand. They swim up, they swim down, they dive bomb. There's this ritual that all the fish unconsciously know, but they don't know it until they see that red belly of the other fish. And what happens is all the fish, male fish, fight or do this dance, which nobody gets killed, no fish can, but all the other ones leave, and the one is left. Then that one inseminates all the eggs. That's called an innate releasing mechanism. And we have instinctual behaviors, just like when I saw that head of that baby, my son William, I was in love, and it was drawn out of me. And we have innate reactions like that. Okay. And this article or this lecture that I have here of this information, this idea itself is an extension of the earlier proposal by C.H. Waddington that the development of all living organisms is determined by epigenetic pathways, which we didn't know in Freud's time. Waddington even directly affirmed the relevance of biology, the notion of archetypes, the idea that there are only a certain number of basic patterns which organic form can assume. And that's why in all cultures, across all different types of people, babies prefer the left breast because it's closer to the heart, and it reminds them of that. That's the theory behind that. But it is innate, and it's almost nobody really prefers the right breast. It goes on to talk about all this brain stuff and biological rhythms and all this stuff that you can look at, the evolutionary perspective. Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. And that was Jung's idea, is that our whole species has gone through an evolution that goes through our brain. So we went through a time where there was actually things were getting better, but very, very slowly. And because archetypes change in millennia, not in like hundreds of years. And this, again, which will tie in with Bowlby's attachment theory. Drawing on observations, which is Bowlby was a kind of a newer psychodynamic type of person who started dealing with attachment theory. He was a doctor, medical doctor, pediatrician. And when they sent all the kids out of London because of the bombings, he went and stayed with the kids and saw how, and that's where he got his theory of attachment, because he saw, and I saw this too. I want to give a little example of that contemporary example. Or I don't know, it's a long time ago, I guess, some of you. But in 1989, there was a huge earthquake, and I was working in Hollister, California, which was right at the epicenter. And there were maybe 25% of the population was depossessed. kicked out of their houses because their houses weren't workable for a couple months after the huge earthquake. And there were two kids that I worked with, two whole groups of kids. One, the wealthy people sent their kids away to Marin, and the poor people had to live in these camps, which were tent camps, for 3 months. And over and over and over, I saw the kids that were separated had way more trouble than the kids who stayed with it. Because to a kid living in a tent for 2 months with their parents, it wasn't that bad. It was fun for them. But it's that attachment and that safety. Bowlby proposed that attachment to a caregiver has evolved since it promotes the species of a survival of helpless infant by protecting him from predators or exposure to the elements. And that's because by walking upright, we can't. I had a friend who has llamas, and I was there maybe 10 years ago when his llamas gave birth. And the baby llama, it was standing up and walking around and nursing within an hour after coming out. Humans, 4 trimester, we call, after birth. There is support for Bowlby's notion that signaling behaviors are innate and therefore archetypal. Even infants born blind or blind and deaf acquire a social smile at approximately 6 weeks, as do normal infants, even though they haven't seen a smile. In fact, children blind and deaf since birth reveal a wide range of normal behaviors, including laughing, crying, babbling, pouting, and typical facial behaviors, including laughing and all those. Thus, these naturally occurring deprivation situations are something that's studied. In other words, studying people that are or don't have sight or hearing. Shows that visual and auditory experiences that would allow imitative learning are not necessary for these signaling or expressive behaviors to develop. Like babies that smile, get picked up. Bowlby proposed 4 principles: an inbuilt bias towards looking at certain patterns of preference to others. So they want to look at patterns that look like faces. Exposure you're learning, by which familiar becomes distinguished from the strange. Usually in kids, that happens about 9 months, where at a certain point, they're looking around the room and they're looking at the faces. No, not the mama. An inbuilt bias to approach the familiar and withdraw from the strange. Feedback by result, which is a behavioral sequence that is augmented and followed by certain results and diminished by others. As a result, these principles, the attachment to adults in general evolves, and usually around 6 to 9 months, into attachment to one or a few people. And so these little pictures here, it shows it. So you can look at that. There's more research on newborns and that kind of thing. This is a good time to interrupt for a second. Well, if you want to ask any questions, or you give me some, if this is like, Dr. Lippincott, this is not making any sense at all, you don't have to ask a question. You can get to it, the next thing.